Hey, what's up everybody? So we're going to be doing the pasteurizing of this our substrate, or horse manure. And what I did first was I put a steamer, a metal steamer on the bottom, so the jars are not sitting on the very bottom of the pot, otherwise they'll crack or burn the substrate. Then I put the jars in there and then filled up the pot with cold water. Make sure it's cold water until you reach about 2/3 of the way on the jars, 2/3 up from the top. Then if you're not careful, these things will bounce around because they'll actually float. So you want to stick something on top of it to hold it down. Otherwise, they're just going to flop and they're going to get submerged, and you don't want that. So right now we're at 120 degrees. We're going to wait till it gets to 135, 133. Shut it off, because if you go over that, it could go past 160. You don't want to go past 160 or under 140. Once it reaches 140, we're going to turn the timer on to 60 minutes, 1 hour, and let it turn off the stove, turn off the burner, and you'll see it'll keep climbing, and then it'll stop and stay steady. And then once it stays steady, it'll stay like that for at least 45 minutes. If it does go under 130 or 140, you just turn the burners back on till you get back to past 140. If it goes over 160, you're pretty much going to have to either stick some water in there or kind of just cross your fingers, because you don't want to put too much water in it, because then you're going to ruin the moisture content that's in the jars, and that's going to cause contaminants. So you got to be very careful when you want to shut off the burner. So right now it's almost at 130, and you can see I used this $5 meat thermometer. The best thing to use. I've used digital ones. I've bought $30 ones, but they're not as effective as this one right here. These ones, those digital ones, they don't work good with steam, because electronics and water don't mix. So I always use these cheap ones, and they're really effective. So we're at 130, and as soon as it gets to about 133, I'm going to shut off the stove and wait till it climbs up to 140. So you want to put it on high all the way. You just want to put it on, just where it's not going to start splashing up over the jars or anything like that. So we're at 133. Oh, a little bit more. So we'll wait till it gets there, and then I'm going to shut off the stove and I'm going to show you guys what it does. And this is pasteurizing. Pasteurizing is pretty much, you're going to be killing the bad bacteria and keeping the good bacteria. Different than sanitizing. So I just shut off the stove because it just reached 133, and it'll keep climbing. Once it gets to 140, I turn on that timer for 60 minutes. And you don't want to sanitize them. If you go over 160, you're pretty much sanitizing, and that kills everything. You don't want that, because you're killing the good bacteria that allows the mushrooms to grow, and that's what you don't want to achieve. So if you go under 140, you're not going to be killing the bad bacteria, and if you go over 160, you're going to be killing the good bacteria. Everything's going to get killed. So you got to be very careful not to go over or under. That's why I shut it off at 133, because it will climb. And I've noticed sometimes if you don't, I've shut it off at 135 and it went over past 160. So it all depends. I stuck the thermometer right in the middle, where it gets in the middle center, and right in the middle of the substrate. That's where the optimal temperature, the true temperature is going to be at. And because if you go too much on the side, once it's going to be hotter on the outsides. That's why you want perfectly in the middle. Okay, so we're looking at till a little bit more until we get to 140. And if it doesn't get there soon, we'll just turn back on the burner. But as you can see, it's climbing. As soon as it gets to 140, bam, that timer goes on. And if it goes under, make sure you turn that burner back on, because you don't want that to go under while it's within the hour. I mean, you got with the minutes to bring it back up to 140 before you start. You're not going to achieve what you want to achieve. And I just use this big my pressure cooker, and because it's big enough and it holds everything nice and neat. I got about 5 jars in there, and and I just stick one in the center. So we're almost there, as you can see. We're pretty much there. Let me just make sure. I don't want it to go jumping the gun and turning it on way too soon. Yeah, it's at 140. Okay, so we're going to turn on the timer for 60 minutes. Okay, and then it'll keep climbing. As long as it doesn't go down, you're good. As long as it doesn't go past 160, you're good. So as you can see, it's kind of just kicking it there at 140. And if it doesn't move too much, I might turn it back on. I just don't want to overheat it, and you can't control. Once it keeps going past 150, you're going to be worried. So yep, see how it went past 140? If you can see, it's like pretty much past 140. If you can see it right here, see that? So it's climbing slowly, which is good, as long as it doesn't go under. And the difference, you know, when you're sanitizing like the jars with the rye grains, and you can see the rye, I have my grains all colonized right here. These are rye berries that have been 100% colonized, and then I'm letting them consolidate for at least 5 to 7 days to allow the mycelium to grab a hold of the substrate. And these are the cakes. These are the last of my cakes that I'll be using. I'm not going to be doing those with vermiculite anymore. I'm going to be strictly focusing on the rye berries. So you can see all the ones I have up above the fridge in a cupboard, and I'll let them sit up there until they're fully colonized. Okay, so and these are the ones I got done, and this is what you want to achieve. You don't want too much moisture in there. You can see how it's loose. That's what you want. Sometimes if you go over when you're doing your field capacity, you could ruin it'll be too much moisture, and you'll see it, and then you're gonna be like, you're gonna be worried, because you can risk all the colonization. You're gonna risk that whole strain. I've done it. I've gone over field capacity, and I've had to actually spread it onto some spawn, and it would colonize, but it wouldn't be as thick as if I had it perfectly with the perfect moisture content. So as you can see, it's climbing, and it's getting up there fast. As long as it doesn't go over 160, we're good, and I don't think it will. That's why I shut it off at about 133, because if you go over that, you're going to go over 160. It's happened before, and then I either gotta dump it out, waste the manure, or risk spreading it on, the spawn onto it through monotub or any type of tray. That's how you're gonna be colonizing it. And we're pretty much getting there at 150. Usually it stops at about 150 to 151. That's the optimal. I've noticed that's usually steady at that. So we're just going to wait until it stops. It'll stay steady for the remainder of the hour. Sometimes it'll start at the last 20 minutes. It'll start slowly cooling down, and you'll notice it. But you don't worry until it gets down to 140. Then you turn it back on, and it'll climb right back up. But within 20 minutes, till the timer is done, you're not going to have to worry about that, because pretty much everything's been pasteurized, which is very important. And I use the shot glasses to hold up the meat thermometer, because you don't want it going too far down, and you don't want to be too up, because that's not going to be the true temperature. You want the true temperature of the substrate. That's right in the middle, in the center. And you can see it's at almost at 150. So that's where I notice where it kind of stays, and it'll stay like that for the hour. Sometimes it depends on whether your moisture content's good. If your moisture content's good, it'll stay at 150. If it's not, it'll start climbing down within 20 minutes, and then you're going to be struggling turning it on, turning it off, turning it on, and it's not going to be perfect moisture content. So you can see it's staying And I've had the analog ones and the digitals in the same pot to test them. It seems like the digitals they climb faster, and they go over, and they're not the same. So I stick to these ones right here, because that's guaranteed. That's going to be the true temperature. Those digital ones, they can malfunction. It's electronics. I don't use them anymore, but I did until I started fucking up and started going over many times. This is a crucial part where if you don't get it right, problems could arise, and it takes quite a couple times of doing this before you can actually get comfortable doing it consistently. It's just like field capacity. You got to do it a couple times, otherwise you got to get used to that. And I've done this over a dozen times. I've done this, so I'm kind of familiar with exactly what to do without making too many mistakes. So we're at 150, a little bit above. See that? It's climbing still, and I'm guaranteed it's going to stay steady right there. 152 is usually where it stays. 151, 152. So I'm going to let you guys see it, so that way you guys can understand and know what to look for when you're ready to do this. You'll be able to do it without worry. So all you have to do is just watch the video, and if you forget, I used to take notes all the time, and I would always write everything down. When you write stuff down, it sticks. So I've always done that. I have a stack of notes, and I'll go back to them. You see how it's climbing a little bit farther? That's about where it's going to stay. Inside that jar, that's what the temperature is, and that's where you want it. It's gonna kill the bad bacteria, and that's exactly the purpose of doing pasteurization. You can see it's going above 152. You're at 154. As long as it doesn't go over 160, we're good. And I don't think it will. I think it's gonna go right between, which is just fine. So once it stops climbing, I usually leave it alone. I don't have to monitor it. I'll come back in about 15-20 minutes just to check, see if it's dropped, and if it starts dropping, now I'll babysit it, make sure it doesn't drop too low. So as you can see, it's steady. Exactly what you're looking for. Once you do this a couple times, it's going to be easier and easier every time you do it. I did this when I was the first time I did this, I ruined the moisture content. I thought it was field capacity, and it wasn't. Once I did the pasteurization, the water was pooled inside the jar, and so it took me time. It took me a couple times to get the hang of it. And no matter what, there's nothing worse than wasting some substrate that you bought or prepared. It's just a waste. So as you can see, it hasn't moved. It's staying right there. So that's good. And the timer has been 10 minutes. A little bit less than 10 minutes. And I'll just let you guys monitor it for at least another five minutes before I let you go. That way you can see what it's doing. Familiarize yourself with how long it takes to get up there and when to shut it off. How high you have the flame dictates on how fast and how far that temperature is going to rise. If you have that flame too high, that inside that jar is just going to keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter. If you have it just perfect, like where it's a little bit over medium high, it'll be exactly what you're seeing right now. And I've had to do that. I had to test it a couple times. It's frustrating when you don't realize what you're doing is such a crucial thing. The flame being too high could cause so much problems. It took me a while to finally clicked. Yeah, okay, that's what I'm doing wrong. It's the flame. First I thought the jars were too close to the bottom, and I thought it was too hot down there, and it was causing it to overheat. See, it's climbing still. Yep, it's still climbing. Slowly, but it's not going to get past 160. So I want to show you guys, that way you guys can see. Because if I shut off the camera and it goes past 160, then I didn't do my job as showing you guys the proper way. So I want to make sure you guys see it and familiarize yourself with exactly what you need to do. This meat thermometer you can buy at any grocery store in the meat section, $5. Buy a cheap one. They work very well. You can see it's like right below 160. That's about where you want it. That's the maximum right there. If it goes any higher than that, I didn't do it right, and I messed up somewhere. And mostly it's probably the flames was too high, or I didn't shut it off at the right temperature, which was about 133 to 135. Before, I would shut it off at 140 and it would climb up to 170. And I have to add ice, I have to add water to cool it down, and then it's just too much water, and it would ruin everything. So I'll just keep you guys here so you guys can see it a little bit longer. And it's been about 15 minutes since I've started this. I've already gathered everything. You know, I started everything before I started showing you guys, because I didn't want you to wait through the whole process of it climbing from cold temperature all the way up to where we need it. So it's very important you make sure you put cold water 2/3 of the way up, or even with the substrate. Because you want it to, the cold water, if you put hot water in there, it's going to be too hot. If you want it to slowly build that substrate to get slowly warm up, and that's very important. And you can see it's almost there. That's worrying. Yep. Okay, so until it stops, then I'll let you guys go. See, even I thought it was going to stay in the middle, and it didn't. That's the tricky part right there. You just never know unless you do it exactly the same every time. And that takes time. And see, it's like right on the edge. We're right there. We don't want to go any higher. If it goes any higher, we could start sterilizing. Okay, it looks good. I don't see it moving anymore. So that's even better, because if it stays there, it's less likely it's going to drop all the way down below 140. And I don't have to sit here and monitor it and stare at it and wait. I could kind of just do what I need to do. And then after the hour, you want to remove the jars right away. Wipe them down, wipe all the water down, the moisture down on the outside of the jar, and let it cool for at least I'd say 18 hours. You don't want to spread this anything, and you want it warm when you put it on mycelium. Mycelium is very delicate. You even when you're misting your monotubs, you'll bruise the mycelium, and it'll be blue. Mycelium bruises blue. Sometimes people think it's a green mold, but no, that's just the mycelium reacting to whatever you're doing to it, and that's what's it's not good. It's hurting the mycelium. It's just going to cause it to stop growing. It's going to cause it to stall, and it's just going to take longer. So that's why you don't spread anything warm on it. I mean, it has to be cool. It has to be room temperature. Just let them sit like these ones for at least 18 hours. That's maximum. 18 hours is maximum. So we're right there. It's still climbing. See that? Fucking nuts. Like fucking on the edge, man. I turned it off exactly where I needed to. Any 2 seconds more, it would have been over 160. So, all right, so looks like it's gonna stay steady. And do you guys have any concerns, any questions? I'm open to you know, advice. I welcome, you know, any type of feedback. If you guys know a better way to do it, you know, I'm not. This isn't the way that, you know, everybody does it. This is the way I do it. You got to find your own way. If you copy everybody else's, you're gonna fail because you're copying them. You want to find your way, and it takes time to do that. So if you have another way, I'll try it out, and if it works, I'll keep doing it. If it doesn't, then I just go back to what works. I like to experiment. This is what this is all about, experimenting. And that's the whole thing about mycology. It's a science. It's a study of fungus, and that's why they classify it as a whole thing. The study of fungus is so spectrum is so broad. There's so many mushrooms out there, poisonous, medical, spiritual. There's lots. So that's why they have a certain classification on mycology. So this is I love it, and I fell in love with it, and that's why I'm sharing it with you guys. So we're there. We're good to go. All right. So tomorrow I'll make a video on when I do this, spreading this into a small tub or a tray. You want at least the tray to be at least 2 inches high. That way you have enough layers, and we'll layer them. A layer of horse manure, a layer of spawn, and a layer at least a ½ inch thick each one, until you get up to 2 inches. And then you let it colonize into up there. I got some